Okay, so on this episode, we're gonna talk about inking an issue of Venom, and this is where I'm inking all the taper lines, and I'm zoomed in so you guys can see all the work there. I'm using a brush, ink, and start tapering away. Any questions, comment down below later. Hey, this is Venom from Marvel Comics Venom issue number 154. As per usual, I'll dip my brush pen into a bottle of ink and then I'll look for a black area and I'll start inking that to make sure that my brush is giving a sharp tip. Every so often I'll look for a black area on the page and I'll test the brush to make sure that it's a nice tip. Now when I'm tapering lines, I like to contour my lines. Don't just randomly taper any kind of line. Think about the object that you're working on and then contour those taper lines. Right here you can see that I'm contouring counterclockwise. Okay, now here I'm contouring clockwise. Notice I was right there. I just tested the brush to make sure I can get a tip. And then here I'm starting from a really thin area. And notice that as I'm going downwards, I'm pivoting the page. With my left hand, I'm pivoting just so I have that contour of the taper lines transition better. Okay, speed up some of these videos for your straightforward line tapering. So when I taper, I like going from thin lines to a really thick line. And while you're doing that, concentrate on the width of how those taper lines are going to be. When you press down too hard, those lines will become really thick. When you don't press hard enough, it'll be just like a regular line. So when you're inking, concentrate on what direction you want the brush to go and how much pressure you want to put on. Now I slow down this part of the video. Notice how I'm tapering the lines and then it's contouring counterclockwise, and then I'll pivot the Bristol board and I'm inking longer taper lines there. That gives you a nice transition of a white area to a middle ground to a dark ground. And then later on I'll go back and ink that. Right there on the top I did some cross hatching, and then as I move down I'll start tapering. So that was a transition of hatch lines, doing some cross hatching over taper lines, and it went down and started tapering. So we'll taper some more lines here. There's going to be some cross tapering over here. Pay attention to how I curve that. So don't always, for the aspiring inkers out there, artists, don't always just draw lines that are straight. Try to contour those lines to the direction of the object that you're drawing or you're inking. So here's some longer lines. I'll start off doing the longer lines and then I'll fill in some of the blacks, and then I'll start contouring. Now this time I'm contouring counterclockwise, a slight counterclockwise. After I have that direction, then I'll pivot the page and then I'll contour clockwise. Cross contouring I call that. And then here I'm inking more lines. This time they're longer taper lines, and then I'll start cross tapering into that area. And then as you taper, notice that I didn't really follow the pencil lines exactly. You don't want to trace when you're doing comic books. When I ink, I see those lines as an indication of what I'm supposed to do, and then I'll go in there and I'll make those lines nicely spaced apart, nicely beginning and nicely ending. Try not to just trace your work when you're inking. Just like if you're penciling, you're sketching something first, and then if your sketch is good, then you go back in there and you draw a darker line. With inking, the pencils is considered your sketch and you're drawing with ink. Now here I'm tapering this side, and then I'll turn the page and then I'll taper the other side. And then as I'm done with this area, you'll notice later that I'm gonna pivot the page again and then I'm gonna cross taper. Okay, here we go. Finish up some of those taper lines. When I notice I'm gonna cross tapering, I don't really concentrate that much on how the tip of the white taper line is gonna be. Now here I'm cross tapering, and then I'll turn it again, and then I'll cross taper here. As I'm cross tapering, towards the end of that cross tapering, I'm going to press down harder to make those lines a little bit thicker. That way this transition of the cross taper to the regular taper is more fluid. After I'm done with this, I'm going to go back to that cross area, tapering area, And then I'm gonna add some lines just to make the lines more fluid, more smoother. Right there, I'm adding a few more lines. Okay, some more basic tapering lines from thin to thick. As a good inker, you should be able to ink thick to thin, as well as thick to thin, as well as thin to thick, both directions. Okay, right now I'm done with all the tapering. I'm gonna go and do some line weights. I'm inking the holding line of the characters. Notice that I'm inking a really thick bold lines. I want that line to be, Venom's arm right here is popping out of the panel, so I wanted those lines to be thicker. And then here, after tapering, I will go back and fill in the blacks. Sometimes I will fill in the blacks after I'm done with all the works. Other times I'll be filling in the blacks while I'm working. This time I'm only working on Venom's left hand, and then filling in the blacks as I go. Here we have Venom's back, and just filling in the blacks, and then that's how I do taper lines. I call this contour taper lines, as well as cross tapering. Again, when you taper lines, make sure you contour. Now you can pause this video, slow it down, and take a look how every taper line is slightly different. Either contour towards the right, contour towards the left, it'll arch counterclockwise or clockwise. Some lines are smaller and some lines are shorter. Thank you for watching this episode of Walden Wong Inks on how I ink Venom using taper lines and inking taper lines with a brush. And if you have any questions, please comment down below, and don't forget to like and hit subscribe. Thanks for watching. Until next time, have a good time.